All right, so construction estimating. Not exactly the most glamorous sounding thing, right?
Yeah, you don't usually picture it on like a reality TV show or anything.
Right. Spreadsheets, numbers. But honestly, folks, there's a whole hidden world here. Like, these are the people who decide if a skyscraper gets built, if that bridge everyone's arguing about gets funded.
No kidding. It's high stakes stuff.
Their numbers have that much power. And we're going deep today, thanks to this Gold Seal training document, into a skill that surprised me for estimators: presentations.
I know, right? You think numbers, but they're putting a ton of emphasis on how you talk about them.
Exactly. Which makes me wonder, who are all these different people an estimator has to present to? Because it can't just be like, they're buddies in the office, yeah.
Oh, definitely not. Think
Hmm.
about it. You've got the owner, the one paying for the whole thing. They're going to be laser focused on the bottom line.
Makes sense.
Then there are the subcontractors, each handling their specific part. Electrical, plumbing, all that. Each one cares most about their scope.
Right, right. So already totally different viewpoints.
Exactly. And then you can't forget the architect. They poured their heart into the design. They want to see it come to life.
Talk about a communication challenge. So an estimator's got to be almost like a chameleon, adapting to each of those perspectives.
Yeah.
But how do they actually pull that off? I mean, we're still talking about construction budgets here, right? Lots of numbers, spreadsheets.
That's where the document really stresses preparation and structure. Like they say, approach your presentation like a construction project itself. You need a blueprint.
I like that analogy.
Yeah. So step one is defining your objectives. What's the key takeaway for each person in the room?
Right, because what matters to the owner might not matter as much to the electrician. Yeah.
Exactly. And then you structure your info logically. And visual aids are huge here.
Because nobody wants to stare at a spreadsheet for an hour.
Right. So you've got charts, graphs, that kind of stuff. But they even talk about 3D models, BIM models, so you can like virtually walk through the project.
Speaking of those BIM models, could you unpack those a bit more for our listeners who might not be familiar?
Sure. BIM stands for Building Information Modeling, and it's basically like a super detailed 3D model of the building.
Okay, yeah, I've seen those. They look pretty cool.
But it's not just about looks. It's got all sorts of data baked in. Materials, costs, schedules, even things like energy performance.
Wow, so it's like way more than just a pretty picture.
Exactly. So in a presentation, you can use that to really show stakeholders what's going on, way better than just like a list of numbers.
That's incredible. Okay, back to the numbers themselves, though. Accuracy's got to be huge here, right? We're talking potentially millions, billions of dollars. How do they make sure they're getting it right and also build that trust with their audience?
Transparency is key, for sure. It's not just showing the final figure, but being clear about your assumptions. Like if there's a risk material prices will jump, you don't hide that.
You're upfront about it.
Exactly. Explain how you're accounting for it, maybe show a couple scenarios, the what if stuff. That way, nobody feels like you're trying to pull a fast one.
Makes sense. But, thinking about these high stakes, it makes me wonder about the ethical side of things. Like, what if an estimator realizes there's going to be a big cost overrun, but it's late in the game? Do they come clean, potentially upsetting everyone, or?
That's where the training gets really interesting. Ethics are like a core theme throughout. They use that exact kind of example.
Really?
Yeah. They're adamant that in the long run, honesty and transparency build the strongest relationships. And in construction, those relationships are everything.
I bet. And I'm guessing the legal side of things is just as important, with all those contracts and clauses flying around.
Oh, yeah. The training specifically calls out knowing those standard contracts, especially the CCDC ones. That's the Canadian Construction Documents Committee.
Ah, the CCDC. Yeah, I've heard that name thrown around a lot.
They basically set the rules of the game. Like there's the stipulated price contract. That's where the price is fixed from the get-go.
Right.
And then there's the unit price contract where payments based on how much work is actually done, measured out. Estimators have got to be fluent in that stuff.
It's kind of blowing my mind how much more goes into this than just number crunching.
Mm-hmm.
It almost sounds like an estimator needs to be a bit of a performer up there to get their point across.
Totally. The document spends a good chunk of time on presentation style.
Like public speaking 101 kind of stuff.
Yeah, confident body language, speaking clearly, but also like anticipating those tough questions, being ready for anything.
It's almost like a stage performance.
It is. And this is where technology comes back in. Those fancy dashboards, the interactive BIM models, they can make a presentation way more engaging.
Like instead of just reading numbers off a page.
Right. I saw this presentation once where instead of just listing out the impact of a design change, the estimator actually showed it happening in the BIM model.
Whoa. So the client could see the cost difference in real time.
Yeah. Super effective. Everyone was glued to the screen.
That's amazing. So for someone listening in, maybe even thinking about a career in construction, what's the big takeaway here?
I'd say it's that estimators aren't just back office number nerds. They're communicators, they're storytellers.
Yeah.
In a way, they're shaping the future, not just through their calculations, but through how they get those calculations across to everyone else.
What a fascinating deep dive. Really makes you appreciate all the work that goes on behind the scenes, literally before a single shovel hits the ground.
Absolutely.
And for our listeners, it makes you think, what other professions might surprise us with how crucial communication is? If you're as intrigued by this hidden world as we are, hit that subscribe button for more deep dives into fascinating, under-the-radar fields just like this one.